Well, hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Tuesday evening session um, based on Bach's B minor Mass. I haven't got much news today, other than, as you see, I've moved venue to something a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, not quite such a mess as the other room I've been using. So that's good, I think, I hope. The other thing I've only got to say is concerned with other choirs and what they're doing. And I'm very happy to report that in spite of all the changes recently, we are still rehearsing live with the Ockham Singers in Guildford every Sunday evening. And it's going really well. We've had two very good new members join us as well, which is really nice. So we're still having a limit of 30 in a big room. Everybody's singing at the on the outside walls, and we're also rehearsing in masks the whole time, which may sound terrible, but we're getting used to it, and it's not as bad as you'd think. But at least it's carrying on, and everybody's really enjoying it, and I certainly am. Also, my Southampton choir are planning to start live rehearsals soon using the Turner Sims Concert Hall in the University of Southampton. So again, it's a very big space, and we're planning to do the Tallis Speminalium, the 40-part motet, and we're going to do it by rehearsing in groups. As you know, perhaps you don't know, but it's actually made up of 8 choirs of 5 voices. So 8 separate choirs, each of 5 voices. So you can divide it up quite nicely into the various choirs. And so we'll probably have 2 choirs at any one time rehearsing in a nice big space, and everybody's socially distanced and very controlled entrances and exits and all that sort of thing. So we're hoping that's going to start very soon. And the other bit of news for us is that as of next week, hopefully, all being well, we will be switching to a Zoom rehearsal, a rehearsal done on Zoom. And don't worry, all the technical things will be sent out to you, and all the instructions about how to do it and how to join. But the great advantage of Zoom is that it's much more interactive. I can see you all, well, not all necessarily at the same time, but I can see people's faces. And when the mics are switched on, we can hear everybody, and you can speak to each other and have a bit of social chit chat in the chat rooms and all that sort of thing as well. So there are huge advantages to Zoom. And that's what most choirs now who are doing this online singing, that's what they're using for those reasons. So that's an exciting development. We'll be joining the Zoom brigade as of next Tuesday. And also, I just should point out that the following week, which will be the 13th of October, is going to be the AGM night. And that will also be done on Zoom, but alas, won't involve any singing, just people talking, including me. So anyway, just so you know, next week Zoom, following week AGM, and then who knows what's going to happen after that. Okay, so for tonight, I wanted to do 3 things. We'll have a quick little warm-up, and we'll sing through the Donna Notice Part Gem as part of that warm-up process. Then we're going to carry on our work with the Confiteor, and we're also going to look at the opening chorus, the first Kyrie of this piece, mostly to talk about the phrasing and how we sing these wonderful phrases. So that's the plan, and I think the most important thing is to get our voices moving first of all. So if you are able to stand up, but not to worry if not. If you can just make sure, if you're sitting down, that you are sitting up very straight. So with your back as straight as it can be. And when you take the breath, the column of air is going to be a vertical tube, as it were. Imagine you have a vertical column, literally supporting everything. So as soon as you feel any kind of inclination to slouch, just remember that that central core, which in this case is going to be a kind of imaginary tube of air, is going to be the process that enables you to sit really straight and keep your back straight and everything else in line. So just make sure we get our posture in that way sorted first of all. Then I'd like, excuse me, and then I would like you to, so I'm quite fit. I've just been doing a lot of singing today. Yes, 4 hours of continuous singing so far today. So I'm certainly warmed up, I think, but maybe you're not so much. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to take a big breath. I just want you to do a massive yawn. And it can be as extreme and as dramatic as you like. So just in your own time, do another massive great yawn. Good. Okay. Now, very simple idea. We've done this many times before. About this is so often we start our warm-up vocal exercises with a rising phrase, which makes a lot of sense in many ways, but sometimes it's good to start in the opposite direction. So just taking a double E vowel, so try and generate the resonance, and as you do this falling phrase, try and be really careful that it doesn't lose pitch. It's very easy to go, and it kind of goes into a free fall. But if we're really supporting, using that vertical column of breath that we've been talking about, if you use that and make sure you power the voice down, so you don't just let it fall as in a kind of free fall, but as always having full control. Let's do that again. We take the breath and breathe. Good. So the point of this really is just to get everything resonating. So it doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to use a lot of energy. It's just getting everything oiled and moving very gently from one pitch to the other. Let's go up a bit. And this time we'll take an R sound. So we have a nice open space, lots of space at the back. Remember, back of the throat is what's really important. Tongue firmly planted on the bottom of the mouth, tip of the tongue behind the bottom teeth. So it's open R and breathe. One of the disadvantages of this system is I can't see anything on my screen apart from some lovely comments from you, which is great. But I can also, of course, see myself. And that's not a spiriting thing to look at for me. But one of the things I notice that when I'm singing, I do have quite a lot of space. I do have my mouth quite widely open. And I'm hazarding a bet here that it's probably bigger space than some of you. Not all, but I can imagine that some of you aren't dropping the jaw as much as I am. Whilst it doesn't look attractive, and I apologize for that, it does give you some indication of just how much relaxation you can put into the jaw and enlarging the space inside the mouth, and particularly at the back, towards the back of the throat. And the more you can do that relaxing, the better. So it's not, but that's why so many singing teachers talk about this idea of the yawn as being the ideal shape, and not a very sort of socially aware yawn, which is half stifled behind a subtly placed hand. It's not that sort of yawn. It's a full-blooded, full on, I'm on my own and I'm going to yawn because I can. So it's that kind of idea that we need. Let's have one more go. So we take the breath and again, be really careful at the end so it doesn't go all gravelly. So you're maintaining the breath rather than tightening the throat, so it doesn't go which you can very easily do because you're getting towards the end of the phrase, we're losing the breath, and so we tend to tighten up to see if we can squeeze that last bit of sound out towards the end of the phrase. Try and maintain the same posture, the same approach of the breath as you did at the start. One more. This time we're going to change it to an ooh sound. And don't be too owl-like, not ooh. So again, keeping it nice and open, lots of space, tongue out of the way. Here we go. One more time. Breathe. Good. Now we're going to start engaging some consonants into that. So we're just going to very simple idea. Ma 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 ma. So 3 in a row. There's the start one. So ma, and really use the M as much as you can to energize the sound and energize the vowel that comes after the M. Take the breath and ma 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 ma. Good. And this time we're going to go up. Me 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 me. So here we go. Starting there. And me 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 me. And remember this idea of the goo sound, introducing the g. The g is such a good consonant because we can do it without interrupting the breath technique. So it's still a good consonant to use. It gets the vowel off to the best possible start, but it's not interrupting the flow like a t is or a s, which uses up too much breath and also changes the shape. We can still go go, 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 go. Let's just do that with me and go, 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 go. Another one. Ga, 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 ga. Gi, 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 gi. Ga, 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 ga. To make sure we are using the breath all the time, especially when we're in the middle of a Bach chorus where we're thinking about the notes and the text and all those sort of things. Okay, let's have a sing through the Dona Nobis Pacem, and then we'll work on the Confiteor after that. So just to get things moving, just make sure I'm still connected. Let's hope. Okay, so this is the Dona Nobis Pacem. It's the very last movement of the piece. Remember, it starts quietly, but it's very, very sustained. Very legato, the most legato we can make it. And it's starting now. Sorry, missed the beginning. Let's try again. Very nice, but not what we required. Wrong composer. Let's try again. Sorry about that. This is the delights of operating Spotify. Good. I hope you're able to hear that okay. There was a slight wobble in the middle. Suddenly the pitch started to go down, the pitch bent. I don't know what on earth caused that, but thinking about it, of course, I'm using Wi-Fi for the Spotify, which is then using Bluetooth to get to the speaker. Then it's being picked up by the microphone. It's going into the laptop, and then Wi-Fi is taking the laptop signal to my Wi-Fi box. That's going down a copper wire and eventually to a fiber optic cable, and eventually to you. So it's an amazing process when we stop to think about it, just how technically how much is going on here for me to be playing a piece of music like that and for you to hear it. So I just hope that it is fundamentally listenable to and not too distorted by the time it gets to you. But one of the another advantages of using Zoom, which we'll find next week, is I can put the music directly in. So there's no speakers, no microphones involved. It just comes straight through the Zoom system, which at least cuts out some of the potential issues. So I hope that was okay, and I hope you managed to keep singing through that. Let's go on to the confiteor, and I've got some more good news for you. I've got a recording of it's the same recording as we used last week, Monteverdi Choir, but using special software, it's been slowed down. So you may find it sounds painfully slow, but it should make life easier at least. So the pitch remains the same. It's still the Baroque pitch A415, but the actual pace, the tempo of the piece is significantly slower, which should make life easier. It sounds a bit odd. You'll hear a rather slow vibrato in the voices because obviously it's been artificially slowed down. So it sounds a little odd. It doesn't sound as good as the original, but for our purposes, I think hopefully it should be quite useful. Anyway, so let's just try the opening and you'll get to see what I mean. So this is still the Monteverdi Choir, John Eliot Gardner Confiteor, which is the last movement before the Sanctus, and in my copy is page 176, but I know you all have different copies. So let's just try the opening and see how we get on. Starting, here we go. Okay, well, I hope you noticed that was significantly slower than last week's recording, which will hopefully make life a little easier. Let's just run over these parts. So starting with the first sopranos. Here we go from the beginning, and all one. And second sopranos from the second bar. On, three, ready, and go. Okay, altos. Bar 4, your first entry, and 1. You have that rather interesting phrase, altos, where you've just sung Baptisma, Bonum, Bonum Baptisma. In other words, you've got a comma each side of the Bonum, Bonum Baptisma. So I think it's good to think of it in those terms. So you put the comma in both sides. So Baptisma, breath. Bonum, Bonum Baptisma. Hope that makes sense. Tenors, this is your version, bar 5, and a 1. Confide, confide. And finally basses, starting in bar 7 and 1. So do put the commas in. For instance, basses, you have confide. There's probably not time to breathe, but just to make sure that last syllable of confite or the o is really short. Confide, confide, and then go through to the baptisma. So the comma after baptisma is still in place, and then before you sing baptisma. Okay, let's put all that together, just as far as there. This is starting now. This is first soprano lead. Ready? Please work. For some reason, it's decided not to play. Let's try again. Okay, so let's go on from there. We'll take the tenors as you're the next part. I'll just play that one more time. In re mi si sounds like this, and 1. And lift. And 1. We just do that one more time, tenors. Here we go. In re mi from the letter A or bar 16 and 1. Okay, here's the altos. This is bar 18, or bar after letter A. Let's go. And 1. Good. Second sopranos. This is bar 20. Here we go. And 1. And we talked about this phrase, the 2 fourths, one after the other. This is the first soprano lead, starting in bar 22, and 1. And finally the basses, starting in bar 24, in the re mi si ho, and 1. from the beginning as far as there with the Monteverdi choir and hoping it works. Here we go. Sorry for the delay. It's starting. Good. I hope this is all making sense, and I hope you are finding this reduced tempo easier to follow and easier to stick with. So we reached letter B. We're now at bar 31, and we're going to take the first sopranos. Letter C, and you notice towards the end of that phrase, around bars 42, 43, it gets quite low. You're below not only your colleagues in the second sopranos, but you're also below the altos as well. So this is where it gets hard to hear when you're used to singing first soprano, especially when you're listening to recordings. So I'll play that one more time. Sing along if you want to. This is at letter B, bar 31, first sopranos. And 1. Okay, this is second sopranos from the same place, bar 31, bar before B, and a 1. Rest, 1, 2, go. Great phrase that. Sometimes you get slightly dodgy phrases in the second sopranos, but that's one of the really good ones. And you notice when you have a succession of rests, seconds like you do in bar 30, 35, 36, 37, try not to rely on following the other parts. Instead, just count you've just sung. 2, 1, 2, go. And it's a mini impulse. So just count the number of minims, 2 per bar. So if you finish off half a bar, you've got 1 beat, and a whole bar's got 2 beats. You've got 1 more beat and you're in. Much easier to do it that way rather than try and follow somebody else's part and hoping for the best. This is the altos after B. This is bar 34. Sounds like this. And 1. Okay, you notice how so often these phrases, hearing each part being played out, they sound the same or they sound very, very similar, but there's nearly always a sting in the tail. So just when you think, oh yes, I know how this goes, it's the same as so-and-so had 3 bars earlier. And of course it is to begin with, but it always goes slightly different towards the end. This is the tenor version. This is bar 34 after letter B, third bar of B. Tenors, and 1. bar. So it starts like the beginning. And then it goes completely different at the end. And finally, basses, we'll just do this passage just for the sake of completing bar 40. Here we go, and 1. 1, 3, 2, 2, 1. Okay, let's try doing all of that. So pretty much where we left off. I'm praying that this is going to work. Good. I hope you managed to pick that up. One bit we didn't do is from the first sopranos after letter C. So this is in bar 45. 2, 1. Which is reasonably straightforward, but it does have that slightly odd start. So that's not what you expect. You expect, which is how it is at the beginning, but you quite an awkward little phrase. It's just worth putting some markings around if it's your own copy, the E natural and the F sharp, because it's the E natural and F sharp in bar 47 and bar 48 that are the notes that you're not expecting. Second sopranos, this is the end of bar 46. 1 and 2. Again, it's a little bit different from the material we've had so far. Let's do that again. End of bar 46, confi, or 1 and 2. 1 and 2. Altos, this is going from just after letter C, so the end of the second bar of C, which is bar 45. Listen. Finishes quite straightforwardly, but the opening of that is quite tricky. Let's try it. So this is the end of bar 45, the last crotchet after the comma, or 1 and 2. It's like variations on a theme all the time. So it sounds like you expect it to sound, and then it slightly goes off-piste. Tenors, can we take you from bar 42? End of bar 42. You have a nice conventional start to this. And a 1. Then it goes to, which is not probably what you expect. And again, and 1. 2, 1, going on. The G natural comes as a bit of a surprise, that last phrase. Because the tonality is changing, the harmonies are changing underneath, so he needs to put the G natural in. And finally, basses. We're going to go from bar 42, which is 2 bars before letter C, and a 1. Which we had covered before. Okay, so we've got as far as bar 55 or thereabouts. Let's see if we can do all of that from the beginning. See how we get on at this new tempo. And pray that it's going to work. Okay, there's your C sharp for the soprano lead, starting now. Alto. Second. First. Basses. First. Alto. Seconds. Basses. I'm sorry to cut it off each time. It sounds horrible, I know. Let's go on from where we've reached. So, second sopranos, you have a new statement of the main theme, the confiteor theme, starting in bar 55. Tricky stuff, really tricky, because it starts still with a variation of the original theme, but it's still quite logical, and then at the end it gets really, really nasty. I'm just going to play from, where's a good place to start? Let's go from in re missione. So this is bar 64 in the second sopranos, and it sounds like this. Almost sounds like random notes. Listen again. Tricky stuff. Okay, altos, this is your bar 54. Let's try that. And a 1. Stop there. Another tricky moment. A lot of these phrases get more and more obscure as the further you get into this section. Let's do that one more time. Altos from bar 54 and a 1. Okay, this is the first soprano, starting after letter D, so this is bar 60. Quite high, but remember all of this is at a Baroque pitch, so it's all a semitone lower than it looks like. Not as bad as it seems. Sopranos, here we go, and 1. And basses, got 2 before D. This is bar 57. And a 1. Here, basically, you have an example of something which is quite rare, and some people are always often surprised when they come across one of these. That's the double sharp sign. You see in bar 66 and again in bar 68, you have a thing that looks like a bit like an X, and that is a double sharp. So you've already had F sharps. So at the beginning of that bar, you're singing F sharp, and he then wants another semitone before he gets to the G sharp, which is in the following bar. Because the F sharp and G sharp are in the key signature, he doesn't want to write a natural. So to fill up the gap between the F sharp and the G sharp, he simply writes an F double sharp. It sounds like an is G natural, effectively, but it's in some ways a clearer way of writing. But as I say, it doesn't happen very often. You don't often see double sharps. It's a very good example of one. Okay, basses, let's sing that. This is from bar 57 and 1. Semitone, semitone, semitone. Good. Tenors. This is bar before letter D, bar 58. Starting on the A. And 1. And 1. So a few awkward things here. First of all, in bar 64, it's not what you expect. E natural, A natural, D sharp. Slightly alien. Alien in the melodic context of what you're singing, but in the harmonic context, it's not so alien. So, because it's modulating into a new key, it's modulating to the key of E major, so he needs that D sharp. You can see the first sopranos have a D sharp, so you need one as well. And then you have this slightly awkward phrase at the end. So a little syncopation. And then you have the D sharp, E natural, F sharp, and then the E sharp, really close. Another semitone. Let's try putting all that together. We're going to go from the second soprano lead in bar 55. Okay, in fact, no, we'll do what bar before, we'll do the alto lead. Okay, Okay, so alto lead in bar 54. And then the second sopranos will come in the next bar and so on. And 1. Put it all together. Basses. Tenor. Soprano. Hope that made some kind of sense. Okay, let's try putting all of that together with our friends in the Monteverdi choir from the beginning. I think it's safer to go from the beginning. We could probably all do with the rehearsal. There's the first note for the first sopranos. Here we go. Altos. Seconds. First. First and seconds. Alto tenor. Seconds. Basses. Tenor. First. Second. Tenor. Seconds. Bass. Tenor. First. Well, we've covered quite a lot of ground there. And as you can see from when I'm playing out the parts, a lot of these parts are really quite tricky. They're quite complex and they go in strange directions with lots of quite strange intervals. It's very difficult to memorize all these parts, and I do appreciate that. So a lot of it is about trying to get used to the idea of reading these intervals and sorting out which are the unexpected ones so that maybe you can learn those phrases and put it back into context. Of course, in some ways it's easier when we're all singing together, and especially in the same room, because of course we have other colleagues to help out. But I do appreciate that whilst we're doing it in this way, you're having to work entirely on your own and rely on your own musicality to get these intervals. Let's do it one more time, and then I'm going to move on and talk about the Kyrie. So we'll do exactly what we've just done, but it's all good. It's all good practice, I think, doing it, especially at this reduced tempo. Here it is from the top. There's a C sharp for the first sopranos, starting now. Alto. Seconds. First. Basses. First, second. Alto tenor. Seconds. second, first, seconds, bass, tenor, first. And just where I stopped it there, you heard the bass come. That's that plain song that I talked about the other day. That's where that first plain song phrase comes in, and then the altos copy it a fifth higher and a bar later. It's really extraordinary writing this. I have to say, I know I don't get out much, as you know, and I get very excited by very strange things, but I absolutely love just doing this. And when I'm working with you, fortunately, I don't think you can hear it very well, but I'm singing as well. And it's great fun. I really do enjoy being able just to hear the Monteverdi choir, see the music, and sing with it. It's great, and it's something that we'll all be learning a huge amount. And I mentioned earlier about this the fact that we're working with the Occam Singers. I'm working with the Occam Singers live, and it's completely because we've done some of this with them, some of this online singing using Zoom and so forth. Now that we've got back into a rehearsal hall and we're working live, it's completely transformed the abilities of the singers. In particular, their listening skills are so much better than they ever were before. So if we're looking for a positive from coronavirus, this is perhaps one small positive that we can hang on to. It's making us all better musicians, I'm quite sure. And above all, we appreciate much more what's going on around us when we do come back together again. And it also helps us to really listen to what's going on. And it's improved their ensemble. It's improved their, particularly their intonation hugely because they're listening so intently. They're so glad to have other singers around that they can listen to. So although I know this is hard and challenging to do it this way, but A, I think it's quite good fun, and B, it's definitely improving us all as musicians because we're having to rely on ourselves instead of relying on Claude or Claudette or whoever it is who happens to be sitting next to us. Anyway, let's move on as time is running out. I want to go to the very opening movement. This is the Kyrie, which you should obviously have right at the beginning of the score. On my score, the bit I want to look at starts on page 7. You've had the big tutti opening to this bit. Those big 4 bars right at the beginning of the score, and then the orchestra introduce this extraordinary long extended fugue. And what's unusual about this is normally a fugue starts with the subject, and then the answer comes in, and so on. In other words, each part comes in on its own, the subject followed by the answer and the dominant, and then another subject and then another answer, and so on. It's played solo, as it were, a single line. But Bach not only has the bass line, bass line, but harmonies as well. So the whole texture is much richer and more involved than you would normally expect at the beginning of a big fugue. So the orchestra have that opening, mostly using the wind instruments, the flutes and the oboes. And then when we get to bar 29, you have a cadence. And the tenors come in for the first time, still with that bass line. And you have the first showing of this extraordinary theme. And you notice it's quite a chromatic melodic line. Again, and she's another example of how this music is so incredibly complex, because to write a fugue at all, as I can speak from experience, as I had to do it at university, I had to write fugues. To write a fugue at all is a highly kind of intellectual process. It requires a huge amount of cognitive effort to create a fugue at all. To do it with a theme which is so chromatic as this, with all these semitones and chromatic alterations to the note, and then put it over a recurring bass line. Just adds to the complexity, adds to the kind of triple, quadruple dimension that Bach is operating here. And the other thing that it contains is this feeling of syncopation. So the phrasing actually goes against the crotchet pulse. Normally you expect it to be 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 1. In other words, to have the quavers in pairs coinciding with the crotchet pulse of the bar. But no, Bach does it the other way. So in other words, he's putting the phrasing across the rhythmic pulse, which is just magical, absolutely magical. And the way to do it when we're singing is to lift the C sharp. So for the tenors, and then put the next couple of quavers together, and the next two, and the even more complex rhythm at the end. But you see the idea. It's placing the C sharp on its own, lift, pad, pad, pad. And that's how we need to phrase it. So lifting the C sharp and then 3 pairs of quavers. So let's have the sopranos and the tenors, because if you look at the soprano lead, the first soprano lead that's in my score, bar 37, it's the same as the tenor part. So let's have the first sopranos and the tenors singing that first statement of the subject. 3 and 4, go. I hope that made sense. I know the first soprano lead is not quite the same. You have the same. Pretty much identical. So the alto lead, which starts on the F sharp in bar 32, this is going to be the same for the second sopranos when you come in bar 39. And the basses, when you eventually come in, you have the same version as the one we've just done with the tenors and the first sopranos, only an octave much lower. So that's a B. have the second sopranos and the altos, starting on the F sharp. Here we go, 1 and 2, go. Pairs. And you have a C natural in the second soprano version. For the altos, you have the same. We've talked about this before, that very often when you're writing a fugue, or when a composer is writing a fugue, you have to modify the answer slightly in its melodic structure so you don't go off in another tangent into yet another key. The idea is that the subject should go from the tonic to the dominant, and the answer, in this case the alto and second soprano version, should go from the dominant back to the tonic, which is why you have to modify and put that C natural in to take you back to where you need to be in terms of the tonality. So finally, basses, let's just have a look at your version. This is bar 45, or letter B. It's very low, 1 and 2, go. I should say that whenever we're singing this text, this Greek text, Kyrie eleison, I'm always quite insistent about using the S sound as a real S when it's Greek, and not the more Italianate S sound that we tend to sing for Latin. So rather than eleison, I'd like you to get used to the idea, even though, interestingly, the Monteverdi choir don't do this, but I'd like to have that leison, the S sound when we're singing in Greek. And be very careful about le-i-son. Sometimes it's le-son. It becomes one sound, effectively le-son. And other times it's le-i-son. If you've got an individual syllable written out, a single I on a quaver or whatever it is, then we sing it. If it's not there, then we just sing Kyrie eleison, and we kind of add the two vowels together. Anyway, enough spiel, let's try singing that. So we're going to go back to the obviously original tempo, although it's quite slow, so we're okay. But we might as well go from the very beginning, because this opening is so glorious, and it will start to make sense. But you only really need to sing when you get to these fugal entries at letter A. So from the top, as they say. The orchestra introduce. Get ready for the tenor lead. Press 2, 3, go. Alto. First soprano. Seconds. Final bases. Seconds. And so on. I know there's loads of notes in between all those statements of the subject and the answer, and I didn't expect you to be able to sing all of those, but I just wanted you to get the general feel for this extraordinary moment. You see how much is going on, how much extra instrumentation there is, and there's so many violin lines and things which aren't even in the vocal score because they've had to simplify it out to make it playable. And did you notice that so far we've had starting on a B or starting on an F sharp, and then just before we stop there, sopranos, first sopranos had another version starting on a C sharp. And so on. So yet another version. This is what makes this piece so amazing, so extraordinary. Just when you think it can't get any more complex, can't get any more intriguing, the composer just throws in yet another element which just transcends this piece into something quite extraordinary. I've got a bit carried away tonight and probably gone on for too long, but many thanks for sharing this amazing piece with you. I hope you're enjoying it and getting something out of it, even under these rather strange conditions. As I said at the beginning, in case you missed it, next week we will be working on Zoom, which will be more interactive, and hopefully everybody will feel a little bit more engaged. We will be sent information about how to link up with Zoom, what you've got to do to log into that. But it should make it easier rather than more difficult. So that's something to look forward to. And as far as repertoire is concerned, I think it's worthwhile carrying on in the way that we have with the confite or at this reduced tempo, which I hope you agree makes it easier to work with. So we'll do that, and we'll try and fill in some of the gaps of this opening Kyrie as well. So I look forward to seeing you all again next week on Zoom. Many thanks to you, and good night for now. Bye. And the cat is clamoring to be let in.